Hello, hello, wonderful humans. Welcome to Board Game Dads, and welcome to another episode of Designer Debut, kickoff episode of 2023. And we are starting off big with a huge name in the board gaming industry. None other than Mike DiLisio. Mike,
I was a,
welcome.
Thank you. I was assuming you were referring to somebody else. I am. If I'm huge, I want to see. I want
Well,
to
listen,
see the small.
if Dan Hughes can refer to himself as an Internet Titan, then
Mm.
I've got to give you your due diligence. I mean, I know he's a lot bigger than both of us, but
Well, he is a legend in his own mind for sure, and he's obviously going to be very thrilled that within the first minute of this show, his name was dropped, and if it wasn't 5 hours later in the UK, I'm sure he'd be summoned like some kind of
exactly,
British
yeah.
demon. Yeah,
His eyes may have twitched a little bit in his sleep just about now. You never know.
you never
Um,
know.
but yeah, Dan was also a guest. In fact, Dan was our inaugural guest on Designer Debut,
Oh, is
talking
that
about
right?
Pora Quest. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So he's no stranger to the channel.
Hmm.
I'm no stranger to the Dice Tower, which is obviously you're part of the organization. You are over there and have been for quite some time,
Hmm.
and do a lot of different things over there. And we'll touch on that a little bit later. But obviously, this is all about the game that you are currently developing with Mr. Dan Hughes. And I love everything about this so far. I love the name. I love the graphic on the Facebook page.
Well, thank
It's
you.
called "I Made You a Mixtape."
Indeed. Yeah.
So go ahead and talk about the genesis of this. Like, was it your idea first? Was it Dan's? Was it a together thing at the instant? How did that come about?
So first of all, thank you. There's a couple of things there. The name, the "I Made You a Mixtape," is kind of a name of necessity. In that originally, I think we were just going to call it Mixtape, but there is already at least one game that is on the Board Game Geek database called Mixtape, and
Right,
so, but it
right.
looks like a very very different game, and it's like Dan and I have said to the couple of people have said, hey, there's another one that's already out there or going to be out there. It's like, look, there's more than one game about trading in the Mediterranean. There's more than one game about zombies. You name it. I think the market can stand more
Yeah.
than one game about making a mixtape. So then I came up with "I Made You a Mixtape" because if I know I've either heard that phrase before, I don't know if it might just be something that's been, I've heard over the years, but it just made sense to me to call it "I Made You a Mixtape." So the genesis of it is, and this is a little bit cloudy because Dan and I have a lot of conversations, and most of them have zero significance or consequence at all. But this one was, I'm relatively sure that Dan had the idea for the theme, right? Um, he said, I want to make this game about a crush where you're trying to make a tape for them. I've been trying to make a mixtape for your crush. And so the idea is Dan's, and all due credit to that because it's a fantastic theme. And he asked me, if I'd be interested in working on it with him. So it was nice to be asked for sure. I think that it particularly appealed to me because I've got a bit of a background working in music, for not making music. I wish. I'm jealous of the musicians out there, but I've worked in music stores back when you used to buy music in stores. Yeah, physical music. Um, and so I have a background in that, and have loved music and still continue to love music. So the theme is great. And he had a couple of ideas. So here's the thing. I think that the what he came to me with was the theme, and that he wanted it to fit into a cassette case. All
Okay.
right. So those are two actually very big things. Those are a brilliant theme and a really nice kind of packaging hook that we're still working to see if we can make happen. And so what that did was it immediately imposed some limitations, right?
Sure.
And limitations that I was all on board for. If this is going to be my first, design. I've done little prototypes here and there in the past, never anything I thought was going to necessarily go anywhere.
Sure.
And so the limitations are basically card count. We wanted it to be strictly a card game with no other components at all. And we wanted it to fit into a cassette case. So that works out to around 38 cards that you can fit unsleeved into a cassette case. So we started with that limitation. And then I don't know how much into the weeds you want to get into it here, but from there, I kind of had this idea of a push your luck, kind of driving mechanism to get the cards. Dan came up with this idea of balancing romantic and platonic songs. So let me just give you the elevator pitch. All right. So that give a little bit of context here. So the idea is that you have somebody that you are interested in, a crush that you are interested in. And this is the time period of either the 80s or the 90s, depending upon which deck you're playing with.
Which is a sweet spot for board gamers, by the way. So, I mean, that definitely works.
I think so, of course. And so, the idea is you're gonna be recording off the radio. You're gonna be making a mixtape by recording off the radio for this person. Now, you ideally want them to know that you are into them by the songs that you're putting on this mixtape, but you have to have some plausible deniability so that if they're not into you, if it's not a reciprocal situation, that you can say, oh, well, no. This is, you're a friend. I'm making this for you because I thought you'd like the music, right? So you have to have a balance of romantic and platonic songs. And so there's a little mechanical hook in there, a scoring element that you want to have perfectly balanced tracks in your mix. And then there are some DJ special powers, but they give you negative points if you put them in your mix, because then the DJ's voice is bleeding in, and that, it's not great if you have the DJ interrupting your mixtape. So so that's kind of the hook, the little elevator pitch, and it's a very, very, light game. It's going to be a kind of a filler type of a thing. But that's what we're starting with.
That's all. I mean, that's got to be the best kind of thing to design, especially when you're doing it for the first time. You are doing it with a friend. It's obviously it's easier because it's so limited to that. So it's an interesting parameter. But besides the balance of the song types, the push your luck thing is thematic too, right? Because you're kind of rolling the dice on,
you are.
I mean, if you ever really made a mixtape for someone before, at least personally, there's definitely moments of reluctance, like, should I really do this? Should I give it to them? Taking it back kind of thing. So that's a great touch.
Thank you. Cool. Yeah, I thought it worked for the most part. So we're still definitely in the the development process. I think the kind of the core aspects of the game we're happy with, but we're doing play testing and both internally and getting some external play testing done as well. And so we're definitely still playing around with some things. There's a couple of elements that we're deciding if we want to either change, get rid of altogether, because one of the interesting things that you mentioned, and I agree with you, but there's also another side of it, which is that you want to start with something relatively easy, right? And so obviously a game like this where you're working with just a deck of cards is going to maybe be simpler to design, but in some ways it's those limitations also create some challenges, right? Because there are a lot of times where Dan and I will be talking, we're like, we really would love it to do this. And the simplest answer is always add a card, add something, right?
Right.
And so the first kind of impulse that you often find, at least I've often found, and I've noticed with Dan as well, is like, okay, here's a problem. A solution is to add something. Well, when you've got these limitations, you can't use that as a crutch.
Right.
You know what I mean? You have to be like, okay, how do we solve this problem without upping the component count, right? We don't want to add in, tokens. We don't want to add in dice. We don't want to do any of those things. We want to keep it to strictly cards, and we want to keep it to a particular card count. And so it's been interesting. In some ways, it's easier because clearly, we're not making a Vital Lacerda style game.
Sure.
But it has been challenging also to try to keep, the core of what we want with those limitations that we've kind of imposed upon ourselves.
Yeah, and it's really interesting that you bring that up because, I would imagine that's something that happens with people who design games pretty consistently. And
Mm-hmm.
it's part of the reason why I wanted to do interviews with first time designers, right? Because
Yeah.
I feel like it would be cool for them and anybody really to look back on it later as it's almost like a diary of sorts. Like, here's what we did the first time. Here's what sucked. Here's what didn't work.
Yeah.
Here's what we changed. But it's interesting you say that about those other things that just don't fit. That's how I would imagine other games get designed, right? That's
Right.
how expansions get designed or
Mm-hmm.
variants or what have you. So it's awesome that that's happening in your design process because I think that'll just add to other stuff that's gonna follow. And I'm sure, again talking about game size, a
Mm-hmm.
fellow member of the Dice Tower, Roy's game Last
Yeah.
Light, right? Completely opposite in many
Yes.
ways.
Oh yeah.
But I'm sure he's had a lot of the same challenges and thus extra ideas that have sort of come out of it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that's interesting too, in that, um, being being in this job, right? We're working for the Dice Tower and working with people there that not only, their vocation is also playing games, talking about games, looking at games with a critical eye, as well as still trying to play them for the enjoyment of playing the game. And also people that have designed games themselves. It's been very interesting. And Roy obviously is coming out strong with a first published design that is pretty spectacular. I don't know if you've had a chance to play it.
I have seen it set up several times, but
yeah,
I haven't. It's not my like style. I'm sure I would love it, but it's very intimidating to me.
Anthony, it's completely not my style of game either, honestly. But I think you should give it a shot. If you come to any of the events, I know you've been to some. I know Roy would teach you, but it's not quite as intimidating as it looks. Anyway, it's been interesting, kind of, and also Tom has designed games as well. So being around people that kind of are able to take the creative approach, it has given me a little bit of the, what's the word? Courage. It sounds too dramatic. Like I had always considered maybe someday I would design a game. And like I said, I've messed around with some prototypes before, but it really just took Dan asking me at the right time with a theme that was very appealing to me to finally get me to go, you know what? Yeah, let's do it. But the reason I bring up Roy and Tom and other people there that have, made games is that it has kind of demystified the process a little bit for me.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Much like Anthony, making content, right? So I think back to, I was a teacher for almost 20 years, a high school teacher in Indiana before I worked for the Dice Tower. And I thought about making videos, because I'd been playing board games for many, many years and watching, a voracious consumer of board game content and Dice Tower, among many other channels as well. And I had thought for a long time, I should make videos. I should do like some playthroughs, some solo playthroughs. I thought about it for a long time. But it finally just took a particular time where I was ready to just do it and not be worried about being perfect right away, to just get out there and do it. And so it's been a similar thing with trying to design this game, is that I've thought about it for a while. I've kind of kicked around ideas in the past, and it finally just took being in the right mind space. Yep. And, who knows if it's going to, be successful, if it's going to fund, if it's going to even go, get to that point. But honestly, at this juncture, I feel like, as silly as it sounds, I've designed a game. You know what I mean? Is it like going to set the world on fire? Very unlikely. But hey,
right.
It's something that I've done, and I'm proud of it. And and hopefully other people, if they get a chance to play it, will like it too. And so it's kind of changed the approach, because I built I do this a lot. I build things up to be this big, huge thing. And then once I get started, I'm like, okay, it's not quite what I thought it was going to be.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I agree with you completely. And the parallel to making content was spot on. I was going to say it myself, and then you said it. I mean, I was always someone who was afraid to talk, in public, to have attention on me, and in many ways, I still am. So it was a big leap to go in front of the camera and talk to no one, and do this stuff and put yourself out there. But like you said, it really is. Once you get over that initial hump, it's a whole different feeling, and you've got obviously great company there in the Dice Tower. I do want to show a couple of quick comments from the chat. I appreciate the chiv. So Ryan says that perhaps Dan follows the Beetlejuice symbols. God, I hope not.
Yeah. I hope not. Yeah, you just have to put a nice pause there between. Oh.
Yes. And say something else and then.
Yeah. So, Evan, this is, look, he's talking about Killing
Evan's up
Joke
late
here.
too.
My my favorite band here. Evan is putting out there that Nighttime is a better album than Pandemonium. I will respectfully disagree, but Nighttime is fantastic. It's their most popular album because it had their biggest hit, Love Like Blood, on it. But that was more in their kind of synth stage. They still had a good aggression to them because they always will. But Pandemonium to me is their tops. But look, I'm not going to quibble. Nighttime is an amazing album.
That's awesome, and I'm glad that he brought that up because there'll be more about the music situation towards the end of the show. Chris here is saying hello to everybody and a great guest tonight. I agree. Very excited.
Thank you so much.
And comments that everyone should take that moment to appreciate what they have accomplished. I agree completely. Thank you for that, Chris.
Indeed.
So, you've sort of touched on the playtesting thing already. You've playtested obviously within the Dice Tower because you guys, like you said, are there all the time around games. What has been has there been a different sort of feeling or feedback from playing with people that you know as opposed to playing with people that you don't, or having people you don't know playtest?
Okay, well, I'm actually very glad you brought this up because I actually have not and don't plan to play test this game at the Dice Tower.
Interesting.
Unless I'm specifically asked. And there's a couple of reasons why. Number one is that typically we don't play test pre-published games on the Dice Tower, right? It's just not something that we do as part of the channel, at least at the main studio. Now we have some fantastic people that work for the channel that do Kickstarter previews and pre-production stuff. Mark does it, and Stella and Ella will do it. And they're amazing. But that's not really what we do at the studio, for one. But the second thing, and to me, the most important thing, is that these are kind of separate endeavors in that everything that I'm doing for the game is being done outside of work hours, right? Because they really are kind of two separate things. Dice Tower, as amazing and as unorthodox of a job and a career that it is absolutely a job, right? And I take it really seriously.
Right.
And so I'm not going to be working on anything that's not directly related to what my responsibilities are at the Dice Tower during Dice Tower hours. Now, that being said, will people there maybe play test it after work or at home or whatever, or on TTS? Absolutely. I'd love all the feedback I can get, especially from people that I play games with often, because I have a little bit more kind of a background. And so this is kind of getting to the root of your question, I think. It's particularly helpful to me to see people play test the game that I don't know, that I have not played games with before, because I've got no frame of reference, right? And so, for example, let's just use Roy as an example, because he also, has designed a game and a much grander game and has done a lot more playtesting, over the years he's been working on it. If he playtests the game, I'm not going to take his opinion any lighter by any means, but I've got a bit of a frame of reference for the types of games that Roy likes, the way he plays games. Like, I've got a lot of background information. I've played games with Roy a lot, right? So I kind of know what some of his tendencies are, what his likes and what his dislikes, things along those lines. And so that gives me some data points for sure. Like, will gamers like Roy have any interest in this game at all?
Right.
You know what I'm getting at. But what's particularly helpful is seeing people that have that I have no connection with whatsoever. I don't know anything about what their play styles are like. I don't know anything about, how they approach a game in general. And so it's been very interesting seeing, things that I kind of knew going in, but have been reinforced, as in, like, I just will sometimes make assumptions that, well, of course, when you put a card into your tableau, you're going to do it this way. Or when you are flipping over cards in a push your luck game and putting them into kind of like a river, you're going to arrange them in this particular way, right? Because that's how I do it. That's how I'm used to it. And then you see someone, you're like, oh gosh, I didn't even think about that. They're doing it vertically. They're not doing it horizontally, or little things like that. You know what I mean? That is very, very interesting to me to break out of my biases, preconceived notions of how games are supposed to be, how players are supposed to approach a game, all those kinds of things. That's been really, really interesting to me. One of the things that Dan and I have been kind of wrestling with a little bit is that there's an element of the game, and I'm not going to get too deep in the weeds here, but there's an element of the game that Dan and I want to be kind of at best secondary, but probably more like a tertiary goal for players, right? It's like, okay, if you're on the fence over whether to take this card or push your luck and take another one, then you could look at this particular element and make that maybe the deciding factor. So not terribly important, maybe worth a few points at the end of the game. What we found early on in some of this testing is that players are looking at this element, and because it's very easy to understand, they're putting a lot of focus on it. And so Dan and I are kind of wrestling with this. We're going, well, we don't really want that to be the main focus, because it might lead to a bad first impression of the game, because that's not where your points are going to really come from. Right. And if you focus on this little thing, the big picture is going to get lost. And so, there's this whole thing of you only get one chance to make a first impression. Right. And if a game doesn't really grab you right away, you may not come back to it. Right. That's just the truth of modern board games, I think.
Oh, yeah.
So that's been, some of the things we're finding in playtesting that has been kind of eye-opening and has led to some of our kind of iterations and tweaking with things. I don't know if that answered your question, Anthony. I'm sorry.
No,
I'm
for
rambling.
sure.
This is late for me, man.
Listen. It's late. I appreciate you staying up.
No problem. I'm an
it's-
old
it's-
man.
it's-
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
I got to play into my dice tower. They definitely. I've been cast as old man Mike, so I feel like I've got to give the people what they want.
Yeah, you got to embrace it. Speaking of and again, not to keep bringing up Dan, but he loves it.
Yeah. He's the co-designer on this bad boy. So,
and plus, you guys have the podcast together as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. Sporadically Bored, which I highly recommend. So
Thank you.
How do you wrestle with that time difference? Because when do you work with him? Like, when do you record with him? When do you talk about feedback from playtesting? How do you guys work that out?
Yeah, it's a work in progress. But we've been doing this for 5 years, basically, meaning communicating, creating content together, which is amazing to me. It's crazy to me that it's been that long. I first got to know Dan through This Game Is Broken, which is, a comedy board gaming podcast that's still going on now, although Dan has not been a part of it for many years. I was a guest on that show, and that's where I first met Dan. This was before I even worked for the Dice Tower.
Oh, okay.
And so that was kind of the beginning of it. And then after This Game Is Broken ended, that's when we launched Sporadically Bored with Mike and Dan. And that's, like I said, been going on about 5 years now. He's 5 hours ahead most time of the year. I think he can be 6 hours ahead depending upon, our daylight savings issues over here. And that is certainly a challenge. What has been very, very helpful is that Dan is a night owl. and he stays up very late typically. But that's not to say that it's a bigger burden, I think, on Dan than it is on me, because a lot of times he'll be coming after a day of work and going right into a thing. Whereas most of my recordings with Dan are on the weekends. We almost exclusively record the podcast on weekends. And for him, it's not quite as late, but the play testing has been something we've been kind of working around as best I can, where it's, if I get home from work, I grab a quick bite to eat, we'll hop onto TTS and try to spend a bit of time messing with it there. We'll throw each other. I mean, we throw each other messages throughout the day if an idea strikes us, or if there's a particular question that we've been wrestling with. We might go, oh, hey, what about this as an idea? As a matter of fact, right now we've got 2 separate kind of prototype changes that we're going to mess with on Sunday and see if we want to implement them at all. And so we have to kind of do more scheduling like that. It would be great if we were in the same time zone, or even better, in the same room, and could kind of hash these things out. Because let me tell you something, Anthony, I absolutely hate Tabletop Simulator, but I hate it. But it is invaluable for playtesting, because it's, we had someone from Hong Kong and someone from, I want to say it was Germany, in the same playtest. And it's just awesome to be able to do that, right? Because it makes that a viable option. But it's the clunkiest. I don't love it. Don't love it.
I only tried to use it one time. I don't even remember what I was trying to play, and I was like, "This is this is awful. Like, I cannot handle this." But I don't think it's really meant that much for it is meant, I think, more for testing things out.
I think so, yeah.
And there's other options out there.
Sure.
That play better for remote play and things like that.
Right.
But it's interesting that you said about getting the feedback from people who you don't know, because they would do something that you would have never thought about doing. And what that struck with me is, you mentioned that you were in education for many years. You taught high school. I taught second grade for many years as well. And it's interesting because there is that when you teach something new to someone for the first time, especially young kids.
Yeah.
Sometimes they blow your mind with the way they interpret something that you
Right.
said or that they heard. So that was a throwback. What subject did you teach, by the way, in high school?
I taught social studies. So primarily world history, sociology. I piloted an AP world history program at the high school that I taught at. And couple of little elective things here and there, but primarily world history, sociology, U.S. history. However, the first 3 years that I taught at an alternative high school in the same district. So it was the alternative high school of the traditional high school that I eventually moved over and taught at. And talk about trial by fire. I mean, that was an amazing experience. I really feel like in those 3 years, I'm not exaggerating. I think I got what feels to me, after doing it for almost 20 years, I feel like I got about 7 years of teaching experience in those 3 years. I really do. And because not only was I teaching social studies there, I was teaching English. I was teaching math, which is a frightening prospect. Right. I was teaching science. I was teaching almost everything. But mostly what you're teaching at that point is life skills, social skills, because there are kids that were in that alternative school for a number of different reasons. Sometimes it was just that the traditional high school environment didn't work for them. Sometimes it was, vocational kind of reasons. Sometimes it was, behavioral, all kinds of things. So anyway, I don't even know what got me onto this subject, but you asked what I taught. That's what I taught, Anthony. Sorry.
No, that's great. I admire that, and that's, like you said, certainly trial by fire, indeed. And, again, makes you stronger. Everything that doesn't kill you, right? All right, so we're going to let you go in a couple minutes, but before that, every guest on Designer Debut, we've ended the show with a bit of trivia.
Oh boy, here we go.
Which is why I asked you earlier what type of music you were into. So I played a similar game with my guest, Charlie McCarran, who is way into indie folk bands. So this game is called Board Game band, or both.
All right, I love it.
Okay. So
Okay.
very simple. I'm going to give you the name of something. You're going to tell me
Mhm.
if it's a board game, an industrial/punk band, or both.
Okay, fantastic.
All right. Here we go. Number one is a title called Slaughterville.
Slaughterville is a board game, Anthony.
That is correct. It is only a board game.
Yes. All right, good. I'm one for
I have
one.
a
One
feeling
for
you're
one.
going to do very well on this, I think.
Well, let's look. You never know. You never know.
All right. Number two, Crocodile Shop.
I know there's a game called Crocodile Pool Party, an old Cosmos game.
Mhm.
Crocodile Shop. That really this is a good one, Anthony, because this sounds like an industrial band to me, but it's not one that I'm familiar with. I'm going to play it safe. I'm going to go with board game, although I bet it's both. Or a band.
Well, now you named all three choices.
I did name all three.
It is only a band. It is surprisingly not a board game called Crocodile Shop. I was shocked myself.
It's a band. Okay, maybe I need to look up Crocodile Shop. All right, here you go. I'm
All right.
1 for 2.
There you go. Next up is a title called Split Second.
Split Second is absolutely a game. Split Second sounds like a new wave band to me, but it could be a punk band. I'm going to say both.
You are correct. It is both. Well
All
done.
Right. I'll tell you what I'm shamed about here, Anthony. Even though I'm 2 for 3, I'm shamed that I have not heard of 2 of these bands. That's terrible.
Well, look, I mean, I basically went on Wikipedia and looked at a whole big list.
I'm hoping this is some guy in his basement that I had a band, you know.
I purposely did try to look at ones that were US based and according to Wikipedia were still presently doing music. But who knows?
Man, you put a lot of effort into this. Okay.
I did. I'm proud of this. All right. Next up is Gang of Four.
Okay. Gang of Four is a band. I'm familiar with the band, but I think it's also a game. I'm going to say both.
It is both.
Great job. It's a card game, I think. Gang of Four, I think it's like a Days of Wonder Cards game, or maybe, yeah. Okay. Right. All right.
All right. Next up, the exciting title Dog Eat Dog.
Oh man, this has to be a band. It also has to be a game. I'm gonna assume if there's not a game called Dog Eat Dog, then everything I knew about board games is gone. There has to be a game called Dog Eat Dog. Now, there's very likely a band called Dog Eat Dog too. I'm going to say both.
It is both again. You're right.
All right.
I know nothing about the bands, but I know the game
either.
was some crappy game about I don't know, economic something or other. It's awful.
It had to be a game. I mean, like you can't not have a game called Dog Eat Dog. So I think I'm like either 3 or 4 or 4 or 5 right here.
I think you're 4 or 5 right now.
Woo!
You're 4 or 5. 4 or 5. All right. So 5 more. Next up is Virus 9.
I'm gonna say band.
Band is correct.
Woohoo!
Oh man, you are rocking this.
All right. I don't know the band, by the way. I didn't know the game, and I'm like, it has to be okay.
Your instincts were correct. You're good. I think it's because it's so late at night that you're.
That's what it is. Yeah. I'm running on pure adrenaline. Pure adrenaline.
All right. Next up is Next up is Earth Crisis.
Oh, now this is interesting. Earth Crisis. Earth Crisis is the name of an album by a reggae band called Steel Pulse, but that's not what we're getting at here. Earth Crisis. This could be tough. There's probably a game called Earth Crisis. Haven't played it. I don't think I have, if there is. I'm going to say just game.
Ooh, it is actually just band.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
No board game called Earth Crisis. Wow. Okay. Well,
shocking. I know.
I need to write that down. That's my next game. All right.
There you go.
Earth Crisis.
All right, yeah. Send Dan a memo on that one.
I will. Yeah, I'll send it out. But he'll stick a U in there somewhere. The British love their extraneous U's.
All right, next up is unexploded cow.
I mean, I think I actually may have seen this game. I don't think I'm confusing it with the whole exploding kitten things. I'm like relatively sure I've seen the game Exploding Cow. Maybe even played it. So it's a game.
It is only a game.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure I played that game. I don't remember it being very good.
It didn't look very good, but
yeah.
looked at the cover. All right, two more.
Okay.
Next up is Cold Water Crown. Cold Water Crown.
Yeah, Cold Water Crown is it's a good fishing game. Yeah, I don't think that would be a ban. I'm going to say just the game.
You are correct.
Have you played Cold Water Crown?
I have not.
Yeah, it's an interesting like worker placement game with about fishing. So
does it play solo?
I'm pretty sure it does. Yeah,
it should, right? Yeah, that makes sense. Cool.
Yeah,
check that out. Yeah, that was probably the highest ranked game that I looked up on this list.
Yeah.
All right, last one here.
Here we go.
Riverboat Gamblers.
Okay. You've done well, Anthony. These are not pushovers by any means. There's only like one or two that I felt confident out of all 10 of these. Riverboat Gamblers certainly sounds like a game. And it certainly sounds like a band, but I don't know that it sounds like a punk or an industrial band. Riverboat Gamblers. But I don't want to meta this. I feel like there's been fewer boths, but that would be so hard. It's got to be hard to get a game and a band. I'm going to go just game, Anthony.
Unfortunately, it is just band.
Really?
I did save that one for last because for that reason, I was shocked too. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So I think I got 7.
You got 7 out of 10. Yeah,
all right. That's acceptable.
That's
a C. C's get degrees, Anthony. C's get degrees. That's what all the teachers say. That's what I told my kids every day.
And
don't reach for the stars, kids. C's get degrees.
Oh man, Mike, I really want to thank you so much for taking some time. In all seriousness, this was a blast and very insightful. And I've been to a couple of Dice Tower retreats, and you've always been extremely welcoming and friendly. And again, all jokes aside, Dan is a wonderful person to hang out with.
He's a peach. No, he really is. I love Dan, and thank you. First of all, thank you for asking me to come on. I mean, of course. This is it's been a lot of fun, and it's been nice hanging out with you. Like you said, the last time we got to hang out a little bit was at the retreat. So
that was good to
actually see you and talk to you here a little bit again.
Agreed. Thank you so much. And where can folks find most of the information about I Made You a Mixtape?
So you can go to a Facebook group. We have a Facebook group for I Made You a Mixtape. If you just go onto Facebook and type in I Made You a Mixtape, you'll find us there. There is a landing page for the game on the web, which is the name of our publishing house, which is www.massiveasterisk.com. That's going to be the name of our publishing little publishing house there. So if you go there, it'll just give you a landing page for that Facebook page.
Cool.
That's really right now about it. You can go on to TTS right now. Now that I've told you how much I dislike Tabletop Simulator, many people are much more savvy at it than I am. I'm actually getting somewhat proficient.
Ryan feels the same way. It's definitely clunky and takes a lot of getting used to, for sure.
It is, but it's, I've gotten a little bit more proficient at it, and I do understand its value. So anyway, you can, if you wanted to play test the game right now, you can. It's right now there's the solo rules are up there and the 2-player rules are there. And so if you are so inclined and would like to check the game out, you can hop onto TTS and check that out. And if you wanted to leave feedback, that would be even more spectacular.
Yes,
but
please do.
Yeah, that should cover.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Mike. I really appreciate it. You have a great night. And everyone, thanks for watching. For those of you who tuned in live, really awesome. If you have questions for Mike or Dan about this game afterwards and you're watching this video, go ahead and throw it in the comments below. I know for a fact that Dan will stalk the video to see if there's any new comments. So he will be sure to answer them if you have them. And that's all for tonight, folks. You have a great one. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Goodbye.